Well, New York City parents struggling with stress may have another thing to worry about, passing that anxiety down to their kids. Thanks for staying with us this afternoon. I'm Tamsin Fidel.
And I'm Erin LeBeau. So a new study suggests children can pick up anxiety disorders from their parents, with moms more likely to pass them on to their daughters and fathers on to their sons. But there are some ways to help.
Yeah, psychologist Dr. Gardere joining us now to talk about all of it. And Dr. Jeff, nice to see you as always. So what were your thoughts when you first saw this study? I would imagine you're not very surprised by it.
Oh, not at all. We know that there is a genetic component when it comes to any kind of behavior, in this case, anxiety-related behaviors, but there's also an environmental influence there. And as you just talked about, with moms influencing their daughters and dads influencing their sons, it does tell us that, yes, there is a genetic component, but that nature versus nurture, the environmental component, is very, very important, as we see with these parents passing it down to their children in that way with regard to same sex.
Sure.
All right, so Dr. Jeff, let's talk about anxiety for a moment. How common is it, and do people even know that they're suffering from it?
Well, a lot of people have anxiety. We know 9.4% of children ages 3 to 17 are experiencing anxiety, and this was before the pandemic. And when it comes to adults, we know that nearly 30 to maybe even 40% of adults after the pandemic or during the pandemic have dealt with anxiety at some point in their lives. So this is one of the major concerns we have with regard to mental health. Anxiety and depression. My biggest concern is around the anxiety, because sometimes it's invisible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was my question. What are some of the behaviors that parents might do, invisible or not, that children interpret as anxiety?
Well, they have excessive worry, they have some fears, they have some obsessive compulsive disorders that we tend to see, those repetitive behaviors, and really just expressing those things out loud, wringing their hands in front of their kids all the time. And those things really do convey a sense of anxiety to the children.
Have you found that children may sometimes mimic those behaviors, or are there other factors involved?
No, I think absolutely children do mimic the behaviors. We as the parents, we as the adults are the role models for our children. So how we handle our anxiety very much influences the way that children handle their own anxiety. Because the other thing is, despite the statistics I gave you, which is about the high anxiety, as Mel Brooks would say, here we're talking about common day-to-day anxiety. And I think we all deal with that to some extent, some much better than others.
I mean, I think we've all dealt with it personally, right? And I'm sure you see it every single day.
Yeah, I see it in my patients. I see it with some of my students, but I see it with a lot of friends and family. And here's the big revelation. You ready? Dr. Jeff himself has been dealing with generalized anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, hypochondriasis, the fear of, getting some sort of illness. I've dealt with that my whole life, but the important thing is, and why I reveal that, is that I've been managing it. I do it through therapy. I do it through talking to my, significant others. Thank goodness my wife is a physician. So I'm always asking her, what are the chances I got something by touching this and whatever? And then as soon as she gives me this face, like, don't ask me that anymore. I know that I'm okay.
Thank you, though, for talking about that, because I think it's hard for a lot of people to talk about, but to hear you talking about it might make somebody else feel like they can open up about it as well.
Now, Dr. Jeff, do you find your kids mimicking your behavior that you exhibit in the home?
When you're a psychologist and you have kids, chances are your kids are going to have issues. And my children, and I have 6 children, as you know, and 3 of my children are dealing with high anxiety. I think part of that is a genetic thing, and the other part is how I handled my own anxiety when I was much younger. But now I'm modeling better ways to deal with anxiety, and that's what parents need to do. They need to be much more calm when they're dealing with their stress, because then that conveys to their children that they can handle this in a way that is much more positive.
It's interesting, though, nowadays that kids even know the word anxiety. I certainly didn't know that word. I'm sure you didn't know that word when you were younger. So let me ask you this: aside from genetics, is it possible for parents to avoid passing their anxiety on to their kids?
Yeah, what this study is saying is that if parents are very cognizant of their own anxiety and anxiety-related behaviors, and they handle it, as I said, in a much more calm manner, talk their way through it, try not to think catastrophic thoughts, that in fact they can keep their kids from getting that kind of anxiety, or if nothing else, teaching them how to incorporate stress and anxiety, but somehow in a more positive way, in that it spurs them into action and doing better. And when they feel that they can't control that anxiety, then being able to talk about it and getting help if they need that.
Let's talk about some of the signs that aren't so overt. How can you recognize anxiety in your child? And as a parent or, another adult figure, what can you do to help them?
Yeah, it's a great question, because kids don't often say, I have anxiety. Right. What they tend to do is they try to mask it. But what we see is quite often they find it hard to concentrate. They have some of that worry themselves. They're very fidgety. We tend to see that. They fidget all the time. They may have some problems eating or sleeping, having nightmares. So we tend to see that there are ways that they are manifesting it. But as soon as we see that this is outside of their norm, and that they become a little bit more obsessed with that worry and anxiety, that's a clear signal that we need to address that with them, by the way we deal with it, but also by getting them to the school counselor and so on. It's okay. That's the bottom line. Yeah. We deal with stress, we deal with anxiety, but the earlier we catch it, the more positive we are, the more calm we are, the more we work it through step by step, the easier that it'll be. And these are life lessons for children on how to deal with anxiety. And then they can be calm like the two of you are every day on television. That's the goal.
Well, I got to tell you, for you to say that it's okay, that's what kids need to know, that it's okay, and that there's a way to manage it and handle it. I know a lot more to talk about. Dr. Jeff, we've got to have you back on this. I think there's more of this conversation to be had.
Absolutely. I won't obsess and worry about being back. I'll just let it happen.
Oh, it's going to happen. It's okay. It's going to happen. All right. We'll see you soon, sir. Thank you.